friends, it's Charisma of Charisma's Corner, and we are in the Little Pink Barn, and we are working on block 7 of the Little Pink Homestead. And this is the Little Pink Barn. That's the block. It's the center of the quilt. It's the biggest block, and it is a lot of work. We are doing a lot of paper piecing for this one. I know that that's not everybody's favorite, but for me, I'd rather do paper piecing than a ton of different templates. But that's just my personal preference to get those as accurate as I can. So let's just start the process of getting these done. I have everything labeled out. I try to use the scraps as much as possible for the little paper pieces that we need. And you can use an add a quarter ruler. I cannot find mine, so I'm just going to use a regular ruler to do that 1/4 inch. But I will walk you through the process of all of these pieces, and let's get started. Okay, so let's start with the roof line. I just kind of want to go in order that the pattern is written for you, because that seems to make the most sense. So I have all of my pieces here. I have my 2 side pieces, and I have some triangles for the edges. This is my roof line, and I have the pink carnation for the barn and the yellow for corn silk for the window. So I'm just going to go ahead, and you can use a bad blade for cutting your paper. I'm just going to go ahead and use my regular blade here. And these are all of the pieces are numbered and labeled with the color that you're supposed to use and the order in which you're supposed to sew them. So corn silk is our first one and carnation is number 2. So that is the most difficult part of paper piecing, is getting your first pieces lined up. And you're working from the rear of the paper when you first start. And you just want to make sure, you have to kind of hold it up and make sure that your first piece is pretty side up and that we have that whole seam line covered, and then it's going to cover the whole space that it needs to for the outline on the back of the paper. So, but you basically want to make sure that you have this whole area covered, and you're going to sew on this line right here. So you just want to make sure you have enough seam allowance there as well, which we do. And then I'm just going to line up my number 2 piece, the carnation, right on that seam line, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and sew on that line. Okay, so I laid that pretty side down, so you want them right sides together. Okay, and so I sewed that seam, and now I'm just going to bring that over. I know it's covered the whole thing, and now I'm going to go to line number 3. I'm going to fold my paper on that line. I'm going to line my 1/4 inch on the edge of my paper where I folded that. I'm going to trim it. And now I know exactly where to add my next piece of carnation, which is right where I cut it, pretty side down. And then I'm going to sew on line number 3. Okay, now I'm going to Go ahead and finger press that. You can press it if you like. Just like that. And now I need to sew on number 4, which is labeled carnation, which is the pink color. So I'm going to go ahead and fold my paper on that line, take my 1/4 inch seam, take my cut to create the 1/4 inch seam. So now I have a perfect 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to line up my next piece right where I know it will cover that area it needs to cover, and then I'm going to sew on that line. Okay, and when you have a line like this where you know you have to sew some other pieces on, you don't want to go past that line because you're going to fold and you don't want the stitches to go in there, otherwise you have to take those stitches out. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and you can press that, but I'm going to go ahead and fold on line number 5. And now I know exactly where to line up number 5, which is sparkle. And I'm going to do that right here. Pretty side down, and then I'm going to sew that line. Okay, and same here. I started right here at the tip of the carnation triangle because I'm going to sew my next line there. So you don't want to go into any of that. But I did sew all the way to the edge here to catch my seam allowance because I'm not going to sew over any of that line. So here is that piece. So then again, I'm going to fold on number 6. Line up my ruler right on the 1/4 inch. Now I know where to line up my next piece of sparkle, which is right here. Pretty sides together. I'm going to flip this over. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and press that. Okay, and now I'm going to fold on line number 7. Again, I'm going to create my 1/4 inch seam here. And you can see why this is so perfect for scraps. And now I'm going to add my blue piece of background fabric here. Pretty side down. And again, I only went to the tip of the corner. I didn't go all the way out into my seam allowance because my next one is going to cover that whole line. Okay, and now I have my roof line done here, or the whole top of my barn is done here. The other thing that I should remind you of is that you can adjust your stitch length to be a smaller stitch if you'd like to make the paper rip off a little bit easier. You can also use paper piecing paper. It's a thin paper that is made for paper piecing, so it's a little bit thinner. I just use my notebook paper or my printer paper. But you can run all of that through your printer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to trim, and you want to trim on that dashed line. So I just lined my ruler up on the bold black line right at 1/4 inch, and then I trim it on that dashed line to get the perfect 1/4 inch. Okay, and now that is trimmed, and now we can add our squares. So there is a couple, look at how perfect and cute that is. So everybody has a different theory on when you should take your paper off. I take it off now and then sew my pieces on. I do not like having to rip all of those small pieces of paper out of my seam allowances. So I do not sew my paper pieces together, but I've heard that several of you do, so just do whatever your preferred method is. I just don't like doing that, and I don't like spending all of that time having to rip out those tiny 1/4-inch pieces. So I feel comfortable ripping the paper off first and then sewing my pieces together. Okay, and now I'm just going to go ahead and sew my blue background squares on there. Okay, so now we'll start working on the middle piece, and that little star, that little rainbow star, has 4 different little strips that you have to put together, and they are all labeled. I did 3 of them already and put them together because they're all pretty much the same, and I just thought I would go through the process of paper piecing with you again to show that, but clearly, you know, there is a lot of little pieces here. Okay, so we have our cobalt, and I need to put water on there, which is this one right here. And I'm just gonna go ahead and line this up, right sides together. Okay, so now I have that done, and I just have to fold on number 3. Okay, and now we have that one done, and we just need to do the same thing. We'll go ahead and trim it. Okay, and now we know exactly where this goes. We're going to go ahead and rip off this paper. We're gonna press that, and then we are adding our pink piece on top of that, the carnation. And now we're going to add the side parts of that. So we have 2 paper piece blocks that we need to do. I've already done one of them. And this is an easy one. We just basically have ice, sparkle, and carnation, and we're making this triangle piece. So we'll go ahead and start. Okay, so now I've pressed that, and now I'm going to go ahead and fold on number 2. Okay, and and it fits. Yay! Okay. So pressing that. And now we'll go ahead and trim it. So you've been through that before. Okay, and now we have the middle section of our barn, and we can just start sewing those together. And we can actually go ahead and sew the top of our barn on. Okay, and now we just have to do the bottom part. And again, they're going to be really easy pieces, but there are a lot of pieces because of the doors. So we have this side of the barn door and this side of the barn door again, but it creates this cute little barn door. So we'll go ahead and start with this smaller one. We need the middle piece of sparkle here. We're going to put it pretty side up and match it with the carnation piece. And this one is another easy one because it's only 3 pieces. And it does have these little notches in the corners of those triangles, and you want to go ahead and cut those out because they are there to make sure that you know exactly where to line those up when you put your pieces together. So they are there on purpose. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. This one has 4 pieces. And that small sparkle is the first one again. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and sew those together. And those notch marks line up perfectly with where you're supposed to sew them. And now we have our little white pieces here that we're going to sew around and frame these in. Okay, and now we are going to sew that bottom row together, and we have this long piece. We have these 2 outer pieces and this middle piece. Word, that is so cute. And And I'm just pressing all of those seams to the pink. I don't have to nestle them or anything, so I just put them all towards the pink, and now we're going to go ahead and sew on the top and bottom. I'm seeing this come together right along with you because I have not made this quilt yet. I'm making it as I demonstrate it to you all. So we are in it together. So I'm going to do these two side pieces of ice, the background color for this block. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and sew that bottom seam. And what's nice about all of these rows is that nothing has to match up, so we don't have to nestle anything. Okay, there is our block. I am so excited to see this come together. Wow, so adorable. So, Little Pink Homestead, Block 7. This is the centerpiece of our quilt, and I am so excited to see this come together with you. I hope you'll share and bring your friends along to this sew along. I was so excited to get this out into the world and to share my love of chickens and my pink barn and all of the things in between. So you can sign up for my newsletter to get the free patterns every other week, and you can follow me on Instagram, CharismaHorton, and until next time, see ya, bye.